Holy shit, that's badass.
She's so badass. I love her so much. Welcome to Electric Enthusiasm, the podcast where we celebrate unironic enthusiasm. I'm a female impersonator, Katie Cobalt.
And I'm Alexander Kyov, and thanks to you, Katie, I have had 3 of the songs from Encanto running on my head. Yeah, running in my head on repeat for probably a good week and a half now, and it doesn't stop. Does it ever stop? Does it ever stop?
No, victory is mine.
No.
I claim victory.
Yes, those songs are so good.
Can I guess? Are they Family Madrigal?
Uh-huh.
We don't talk about Bruno and Surface Pressure. Is it those
I have
three?
Surface Pressure running in my head right now. They really get stuck in there. I try to listen to other music besides that as well.
Why? Why? But like,
I know.
Why?
Yeah, I'm afraid it will install itself as a virus in my brain and just slowly take over all my processing capacity until all I can do is sit in a corner and mumble, pressure like a drip, 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 da 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 da.
Well, I feel like there's a moment in the animation of that video. This is so not what we're talking about today, but sure. where she's holding the world up and she turns her head and like hammers over her shoulder and she goes, whoa.
Yes.
It's the most dramatic whoa of all time, and I'm so here for it.
Anyway, what are we doing today, Katie?
Well, why don't you tell us how this works? When we're not talking about Encanto, what are we doing, Alex?
Yes. In each episode, one of us picks a topic that they're really excited about, but that the other one knows little or nothing about, and then tries their damn best to spread their enthusiasm to the other person, to the host, and to you, the listener. And of course, sometimes we have guests on who are super excited about something we know nothing about.
And then we have the moment of meta, where we nerd out about enthusiasm itself and talk about why it's important and how you can also get Encanto songs stuck in your head and live a more enthusiastic life. This is officially becoming an Encanto fan podcast now.
An Encanto fan, yeah. From now on, that's all we're talking about. Encanto enthusiasm. There we go.
Exactly.
Yes. Because we think the world needs more Encanto. No, more enthusiasm. And you can share yours on our website, electricenthusiasm.com, or our Instagram @electricenthusiasm. Tell us what you're excited about these days. You can even plain old send us an email at hello@electricenthusiasm.com. What are we talking about today, Katie?
We are talking about the Jewel Box Revue. Alex, do you know anything about this topic?
Here's the sum total of my knowledge on this topic. Zilch. Zip. Nada. I know nothing. Is it a team of Dutch jewelers who review jewel boxes? No.
I've talked about it before, and I think maybe if I say the phrase 25 men, 1 woman, showgirl, chorus line, act, I've talked about it before, but only ever in passing.
Right.
Don't worry about it, because you're going to learn all about it today.
Awesome! So, Katie, we like to start with the facts first around here. So, what should a person know about the Jewel Box Revue?
So, the Jewel Box Revue started off in a club in Miami, but then became a touring show full of female impersonators, featuring very proudly on their banners 25 men and 1 girl. And part of the allure of the show was like, which one's the girl?
This is right up your alley, isn't it, Katie?
It's so up my alley. It's drag, it's gay, it's fabulous. Okay, so I know you like a little bit of structure in an episode, so we're going to have like a zoom in and a zoom out, right? Start with an overview. We're going to zoom in on some significant characters and then zoom out to understand the context of the time, to give you a bit of like a...
Yes, structure. I love it.
Okay, I want to take you back. You're sitting in the Apollo Theater in New York, maybe, or, the Tivoli Theater in Chicago. It's the late 1960s. It's a pitch black stage. And then you hear a sweet voice ringing out, singing an a cappella version of a Billie Holiday number. No accompaniment, just a pure voice. And then a pin spotlight lights up a face in the darkness. And it's a dead ringer for Miss Holiday herself. But it's not! It's the female impersonator, Billie Day. This is the kind of high-quality, glamorous, classy performance the Jewel Box Revue became known for. So it started in 1939 at a club in Miami called the Jewel Box. That's where it gets its name. It was started by this gay couple, Danny Brown and Doc Brenner. And they wanted to show that drag and female impersonation was a very serious art form that needed to be respected. At the time, drag and female impersonation was seen as kind of frivolous or perverted or dirty. It was not seen as like a classy thing that you'd go see. It was kind of degenerates and perverts. So they would often talk about this idea of it's like a classy show and most of our men are married and they have children and families. They didn't, but they said that anyways. Brown was like the front man. He would sell the show, and it's a hard sell to make, but he said a lot of really interesting things in the press, and I've got a little quote for you there.
Mm-hmm. We took the degeneracy out of female impersonation. The Jewel Box Revue is just a clean family type show.
It's a family show.
It's a family show with, also family type entertainment. I love that. Okay, so 1939, like a drag show in 1939. How, yeah.
So drag has been happening the whole damn time, right? But before 1939, it was kind of like in basement clubs and in gay bars exclusively, and it was very like dirty. Not necessarily dirty as in like it was sex jokes the entire time, but it wasn't a high class performative art form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doc Brenner would make the costumes. He did the choreographies. He could fill in for a chorus boy if needed. So he was like more of the artsy, creative, behind the scenes guy. Danny was a frontman, sold the show. And like I mentioned, they were lovers, which means that this was a gay owned and operated crew, which is unheard of for the time.
Of course.
Even today, I've heard interviews from the performers from the time. They still speak very fondly of their experiences. It wasn't a straight person capitalizing on the perversion of female impersonation. It was a community. It was a safe space. And it was like a full stage performance with costumes and live vocals and dancing chorus girls and chorus boys. It was absolutely beautiful. I even managed to find a bunch of the old design work and all the graphics and the programs and stuff. And so you can see the quality of this event.
Yes, the costumes. Wow.
The performer in the center there in the black dress, that's Lynn Carter. They became one of the most famous female impersonators at the time. I have some more photos for you. This is from their performance at the Apollo Theater.
That must have been a little later. That looks very 50s or 60s.
Yeah, this is 69. They toured for a very long time.
Wow.
And that's a little backstage shot of the girls.
Wow.
They are very beautiful. It's like a full stage production. It's not just a queen behind a bar with a cheap H&M dress.
No, definitely not. This is high class. This is upscale. Wow.
Exactly.
And the middle picture from 1969. Is that a whole boat behind them, or what the hell is that?
They had huge stage props, and they had like tiered stages as well. So they have performers standing up a stairs, and like you'd have layers of like performers singing out to the audience. Like they had budget.
Yes, they did.
I will 100%, when this episode comes out, be posting, obviously, our episode card. You can swipe through and see all of the photos that I shared with Alex in this episode. So if you want to see those photos, you can go check out our Instagram and also put them on our website as well. But those photos will be there for you to have a look at. I first heard about them in this book here, Legendary Children, which is a book that takes the things that you see on Drag Race and then puts in a historical and political context. There was like this social veneer at the time where in the press and the marketing of the show, they would often be like, yes, they're straight men, they're heterosexuals, yes, haha. Like performers often had the title Mr. before the name. So like Mr. Lynn Carter, despite the fact that they fully appeared on stage as a woman. And so this is the thing, like even though the audiences understood that these were most likely queer performers, and the performers knew were queer performers, the veneer worked well enough that the middle American audience would walk through the door and sit down, right? It's all about that illusion, whether or not you're playing with gender or the illusion that you're an average married man. That social veneer, as long as you have that agreed social contract, like, yeah, we're straight, we're straight, you'll come, right? You'll come sit down.
I'm straight, you're straight, we're all straight.
Exactly. They did occasionally play gay bars, but their majority of their audiences were straight people.
Wow. What an interesting approach to it.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of the Savoy Ballroom. Like pre-Savoy Ballroom, there wasn't like a high-class, nice place to go dance for Black participants. So they created like this beautiful, luxurious venue where everyone could go dance. It's kind of like the same thing. There was no high class, luxurious performance opportunities for female impersonators or drag performers. So these guys were like, fuck it, we'll make it happen.
Wow. That is so cool.
So they started in this club in Miami, but soon they were touring all over America. Almost all over America. Well, actually, it was a fully integrated show and they had a diverse cast. And it's the 1940s, so they can't really go to the South because of integration laws. But they did go pretty much everywhere else. So they performed for a wide variety of audiences. I heard an interview with one of the performers who talked about the Borscht Circuit, which is the Catskill Mountains in New York State. Have you seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
I have not.
Okay. There's a scene where she goes to the Catskill Mountains and you can see the area that these performers would have gone to. It's very, very Jewish. And one of their featured performers I mentioned earlier, Lynn Carter, was Jewish. They were an absolute fucking hit here because they would tell jokes in Yiddish and all of the audience would die of laughter. Imagine New York high-class Jewish families up in their summer vacation homes popping down to watch a bunch of drag queens. That's who they performed for.
That's hilarious. So their act, was it all singing and dancing? Was there some comedy? What was the act?
So it depended on the performer, but the majority of the show was singing and dancing. There was always a big number at the end with like showgirls on the stage. You'd often have featured performers. So you'd have like one person doing a solo. So Billie Day did Billie Holiday impersonations. Mm-hmm. There are people who did Julie Garden impersonations. Depending on the individual who was in that crew, that set, who would be performing that night, who had the skill set to come forward. A lot of people were just background performers, ensemble dancers. So Lynn Carter was very much the name. So you'd have like the Jewelbox Revue featuring Lynn Carter.
Mr. Lynn Carter. That is so interesting. So it's fair to say that the act itself would be quite similar to a variety act or like a Moulin Rouge act.
Yeah.
But with men instead of women.
Yes. And so you had people like Sammy Davis Jr., Ella Fitzgerald, Julie Garden were all regulars. It wasn't that they popped by once. They were regulars.
Wow.
So this was in the interview with Terry. She was saying that there was a quick change moment right before the final number in one of these shows. Lynn Carter was on stage in her beaded gown and feathers and all that. And everyone was rushing because for some reason this theater was set up where the stage was at one end, the audience was there, and then the dressing rooms were behind the audience on the other side of the atrium. You had to go through the atrium, through this audience to get on stage. Terry was the only person who managed to make the quick change in time. And so for the big final number, it was just the two of them on stage. That was it. There was no one else on stage. It's meant to have like a line of chorus girls all doing high kicks and whatever. And it was just the two of them. Lynn looked at her and she was like, I don't know what to say, dude. Like, it's just us. Lynn just looked at the audience because she was such a great performer and she had such a great sense of charisma. She just shot a look at the audience and the audience just died of laughter. So it was very high class, amazing. Very wonderful, but it's show business. Something's going to go wrong. Always something's going to go wrong. I mentioned earlier that there were 25 men and one woman. It was Stormé DeLarverie. Stormé DeLarverie.
Best name ever.
I'm going to double check I'm pronouncing it correctly. Stormé DeLarverie.
I want to say beautiful, but also quite androgynous / masculine face or look.
So this is Stormé DeLarverie. She is the one girl. She acted as the MC, the host of the show. She joined the show in 1955. She started her life as a singer, actually. She had this beautiful silver baritone. And somebody recommended, like, hey, have you heard of the Jewelbox Revue? Because you'd be perfect for it. A lot of people told her not to do it. A lot of her friends and family around her said, don't do this. But she is not that kind of girl. So she was born in New Orleans in Christmas Eve, 1920. She had a black mom and a white dad, and she was privately educated and raised by her grandfather. She got beaten up a lot growing up. She was seen as too black for the white kids and too white for the black kids, and it didn't help that she came from a relatively wealthy family. I've got this quote from an interview with her.
Finally told me, because everybody, the white kids were beating me up, the black kids were beating, everybody was jumping on me. If it wasn't because of my father's money, it was because of being black, being a Negro with a white face. Yeah. So he told me if I didn't stop running, I'd be running the rest of my life. And when I was 15, I stopped running, and I haven't run a day since.
Holy shit, that's badass.
She's so badass. I love her so much. Basically, people told her, don't do this. You shouldn't be part of the show. You know, you're going to get in trouble. It's going to be a pain in the butt. She's like, fuck that. I'm going to do what I want. So she went on stage performing as a man and had her girlfriend in the wings cheering her on. Anytime anyone told her no, she was kind of like, fuck you. She really did try to like be the respectable young woman that the world wanted her to be and wear men's clothes on stage and then women's wear during the day. Mm-hmm. However, at the time, cross-dressing is illegal. So if you are caught on the streets in drag, you could be arrested. She got arrested twice for being a drag queen while wearing women's clothes in day-to-day life.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So she was like, fuck it. And then she just started wearing menswear all the time.
Yeah.
There is this amazing photo shoot she did with Diane Arbus, and the photos from it are absolutely stunning. She is beautiful in these shots.
She has a little bit of a Johnny Depp going on.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah, it may just be me, but like I think it's the jawline or the eyes or something. Anyway, gorgeous. Great suit too.
I have a lot of photos in this episode. I will make sure they get put up in places. But this is the kind of woman she was. She also was not afraid to be who she was. And we love that on this show. We love a person who's enthusiastic about themselves, who celebrates what makes them different, what makes them special.
Just so I'm clear here. So we have 25 men performing as women, and then a woman MC dressed as a man presenting the whole show.
Yes.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I love that.
So the show started in 1939 and didn't finish touring until like the mid-70s.
Ha! Holy shit.
It was a massively long-running show. They had a rotating cast of people coming, joining the show, leaving the show, and coming back again. I promise this is going to come back and make sense in a little bit. But Alex, what do you know about the Stonewall Rebellion or the Stonewall Uprising?
Gay bar in New York, 1966?
Very close, 1969.
Oh, thank you. Cops came in and raided the place regularly, and then they stood up to them, and that's about it. I think that's, yeah.
That's pretty accurate. So it was a civil disobedience. It was at the Stonewall in Greenwich Village, as you pointed out. It was on June 28th, 1969 is when it started. The exact story about what exactly happened is very hazy. It's really hard to say what actually went down that night. But it cannot be denied that this rebellion is widely considered to be a watershed event that transformed gay liberation and the fight for the LGBTQIA+ rights in the United States. And guess who was there being a badass?
Our friend Stormy?
Yes, she was!
No way!
Yes, she was. There is an argument to be made that she threw the first punch at Stonewall. There's conversations about there being an androgynous, quote-unquote, butch lesbian who was very aggressive, who punched somebody. She doesn't say it's her. However, she did say that she got in a fight with a cop.
I walked away with an eye bleeding, but he was laying on the ground. Out.
And the picture above, later in life, but with a helmet?
Yes.
Camouflage helmet under her arm?
Yes. Over her shoulders, those two photos are both of her.
One presenting as a woman, one presenting more male, yeah.
So the reason why she has that helmet is because she worked security or as a bouncer in her later years.
No way.
Yeah. So her girlfriend of 27 years passed. And that was kind of it for Stormy. She retired from show business and she was like, I'm done with this, but I'm going to look after mine. And so she started working as a bouncer or as security in the Greenwich Village at queer venues like Henrietta Hudson, which is a very famous queer bar. She'd be on the lookout for what she called ugliness, basically people being dicks. And she was there to protect her quote unquote baby girls, which was a loose collection of lesbians, drag performers, and other queer people who formed her found family. And that's what she did until she passed. And she was seen as the guardian of the Greenwich Village.
Wow. I love that.
She's
other people,
so fucking cool.
yeah. Some people retire and take up golf or macrame or crocheting or whatever. And she's like, nah, no, not doing that.
No.
I'm going to be out there, fighting ugliness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm going to link to a little documentary about her life. And one of the people who interviewed her and wrote a book about gay life during this time period says that she, in her later years, was still as enthusiastic as ever. She was enthusiastic to meet new friends. She was enthusiastic to live her life as she wanted to live it. But that enthusiasm that she carried, that passion she carried for performing, for being exactly who she wanted to be, was all the way up until her last days in this world. She is my new icon.
She is clearly too awesome. Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing. Yes. Holy shit. Holy shit.
The Jewel Box Revue is this incredible community of queer people. Stormé is clearly my favorite. I'm not biased, but pretty much everyone I looked into, from Lynn Carter, Billy Day, Terry Noel, everyone has such amazing stories to tell from this time period, from having this sense of community, because it was gay owned, gay operated. Everybody who was part of that event felt like someone you could talk to. Apparently there was some like bitchiness, and apparently there was some divas, but isn't that part of the fun of it all?
No.
It's show business.
That's amazing. Of course it is. That's fantastic. Was there a sense within the group, within the group of performers, that they were, trying to change attitudes, or were they just trying to be in show business?
The two guys who ran the show, Doc and Danny, they definitely wanted to change attitudes.
Right.
They definitely wanted to show that female impersonation, so they didn't call it drag at the time, they definitely called it female impersonation or male impersonation. For them, it was very much about showing that this art form is an art form, and that it's not just some dude in a dress and some glitter. Like, they wanted to show the world that this was something worth taking seriously, and something that is deserving of being on the highest stages, and that deserves the production value, deserves all of this praise. And for them, they were very much trying to promote that this is important. And I think that by doing so, they're showing the world that not only is this art form important, but these people who are on the stage are also important. And considering this happened during, like, pre-Stonewall, essentially, this is before the gay liberation movement as we know it, like, that was really difficult to do at that time. To say that these people are important. They deserve to be on your stage. They deserve to be celebrated in a way that they probably aren't celebrated in their day-to-day lives. So, depends on the individual performer in terms of how much of a political agenda they had, but definitely the guys behind the show had this idea of, like, we deserve to be on these stages.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And they really did play for all stages. They played in Black-owned theaters. They played in white-owned theaters. They played for integrated audiences everywhere they went. I will say I have seen some of the programs which include a lot of yellowface. So they weren't perfect. Like, there is some performances, like the Japanese performance or the Oriental performance, where they have all the performers in kimono with yellowface.
But that goes back to our enthusiasm, that you can still be enthusiastic about things that are not 110% perfect all the time.
Yes.
In all cases. I'm still hung up on the fact that they could perform, female impersonators could perform all over the US as long as it wasn't racially integrated. That's what kept them out of the South. Not the men in dresses, but the fact that they were actually racially integrated. Wow.
But they also weren't allowed to leave the venues in drag. They had to completely de-drag, completely take off all the makeup, all the clothes, everything, before they could leave the venue. Because if they were seen in drag outside, instantly illegal.
Yeah.
And more often than not, from what I read, was the theater owners themselves be the ones really policing that. They were like, please do not leave in drag. Please get changed. You can't leave like that. Yeah. But occasionally, for something like New Year's, they would let them go out and drag. Because for some of them, that's how they felt the most beautiful, the most confident. And so they really wanted to, but it was very touch and go.
So here's my question. It's clear that there's an increased acceptance of men wearing, female-coded clothes, right? Mm-hmm. Women-coded clothes. And I've been told by a lot of conservative commentators that this will surely lead to the downfall of Western civilization. Did you see some of the reactions to like Harry Styles? He was on the cover of Vogue in a dress.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you see some of the reactions to that? Western conservative traditional values are under threat. We're raising a generation of weak men. We will be invaded by Russia or China, and Western civilization will fall to degeneracy. So here's my question: if this has been going on since 1939, how come Western civilization is still here? I do not get it.
It's almost like skirts and heels are only recently codified as female items of clothing, and they used to be actually worn by men, and women used to be seen as being very manly for wearing a skirt.
Now you're talking. Now you're
It's
talking
crazy.
complete silliness, Katie. What are you on about? Ever seen the Greek honor guard, like their elite soldiers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with a
Completely
little
dressed up.
ballerina tutu skirt and slippers and tights and yeah.
Yeah. You just go back like 200 years and it's completely opposite. All of these gender roles that we have in our society are one, constructed, and two,
Yeah,
recently constructed. So this
yeah,
idea of it's going to be the fall of Western civilization is like, no, not really. Like we've been through this. We've done this at least 100 times. It's
yeah.
not a big deal. Calm down.
Exactly. And they're constructed and they constantly change.
Yep.
And that's what some people just don't deal very well with.
No.
Yeah.
And also on the Harry Styles comment, Billy Porter has been doing that the whole damn time. And Billy Porter is not on the cover of Vogue. So why does Harry Styles, a young, cis, straight, white boy, get celebrated to be on the cover of Vogue because he wore a dress versus there's so many queer Black POC artists who have been doing the damn thing for
Yeah.
ages,
Yeah.
but it's Harry Styles on the cover.
That's a very good point. Did I mention Eddie Izzard?
Yes.
And I was at one of her shows and she says, I've been doing this since the 1980s in the UK, which was a challenge. And she also says, gender fluid, gender fucking liquid, baby.
I love that concept. I think gender is a construct, and it's fun to play jump rope with that construct occasionally. And I think that's what I love about the Jewel Box Review, is that they're very obliquely being like, gender? Who is she? Don't know her. Never heard of her. And I just love that concept.
Yes.
So to sum up, I think it's really important to ask ourselves, why should we care about this vaudeville performance circuit that happened in the 1950s? Why is it important for us to care about this? First of all, understanding that history is diverse is vital to our understanding of how far we've come and the struggles of the LGBTQIA+ community. It's not a widely taught history. I think it's pretty rare to learn about marginalized communities in history class. I went to school in Hong Kong and I learned more about the witch trials than I did about fucking anything related to colonialism in my own country.
Wow.
We get taught a very limited view of history, and it tends to be surrounded by great men, specifically great white men. So to celebrate, for example, I don't know, a biracial androgynous lesbian is pretty fucking radical. It makes us more empathetic. It helps us have compassion for others. And when we see representation in the media or in podcasts, for example, we very rarely see identities that intersect, right? You'll see maybe a biracial person or an androgynous person, but it's rare to see biracial, queer, women. But these people are real, and they have been real for years. It's not like this concept of identity just happened because intersectional feminism happened. No, people like Stormé exist and have existed this whole time. Whenever we think about intersectional identities, hi, it's me. I'm biracial, I'm queer. Like, I don't fit into a box. I am many different boxes. And I think so are you, and so is everybody. And it's really cool when we get to see examples of that representation. They're real. They're not fictional. They're 100% real, and they've been here the whole damn time. Going back into the history and seeing these characters and understanding more about them, it's just so fucking cool. It's so exciting. Also, she's so badass. She's so fucking cool.
So badass. I have two questions.
Yeah.
First question: what has been the influence on drag shows these days from the Jewel Box Review?
The Jewel Box Review was all live singing and live dancing. What was called at the time like a record act, where you would lip sync along to a record, was seen as lesser. It was seen as cheap entertainment. For the Jewel Box Review, you sang live. There was no other option, particularly because it's meant to be this high class, luxurious entertainment. What's very interesting is that once the Jewel Box Revue kind of ended, a lot of these like really big venues started to close down. With that, the funding kind of closed down as well. So there was less money to have these big, massive female impersonator performances. Now we see the rise of lip sync performances and record performances, because you don't need a huge amount of money to make one of those performances happen. You kind of just need a record, an impersonator, and a small stage, and then you can make the show happen. So towards the 80s, you see like the general acceptance of a lip sync performance. And now modern day drag is almost exclusively lip syncs. And occasionally you'll get a live singer. But nowadays, it's much, much more common to have a lip sync performance. Some people think it also helps with selling the illusion. If you have someone who looks like a woman and is lip syncing and sounds like a woman, it sells the illusion a little bit better. That concept of like high drag being exclusively singing has died down now. But then you also have things like the RuPaul Work the World tour, which is a tour of a bunch of drag queens going around the world doing exceptional high drag performances with acrobatics and fire and lights and people hanging from the ceiling. I don't know. You do have kind of like the Jewel Box Revue coming back again with these kind of giant tours. The interesting thing for me is how it shows the end of the live vocals as a drag performer, because they're not as common anymore. They are more common in certain scenes. Like from my understanding, the UK, it's much more common to hear a live vocal, but it's not the norm anymore.
Right. Interesting.
That was a lot of info dumping. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was great. And second question, so they stopped in 77, I think, is that?
In the late 70s. I don't know
70s.
exactly when.
Okay. And has there been anything like it since? I mean, you mentioned RuPaul's big production shows.
Yeah. I think Work the World is the only one at that scale.
Yeah.
Because it was like selling out giant theaters. I do know that there are queens who do sell out larger arenas, but not necessarily like a huge group of them, as far as I know. But maybe our listeners know more than I do and have suggestions for me and places I should go, because I'm definitely interested.
Yeah. But I guess the major shift to drag performance these days is that the mister is out. It doesn't have to be a mister.
Yeah, no, you don't have to do that anymore.
Right? There's more of an acceptance of saying that yes, you can be a man performing drag, but you could also be trans, you could be a woman, you could be whatever you want to be.
There was a straight drag queen on RuPaul recently. Like a straight cis het man. And everyone was like, wait, what? You exist? That's so exciting. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We're breaking into the straights now.
Yes. That's awesome. That is so awesome.
Drag is way more mainstreamed thanks to RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't think there has been any drag thing that is as big as RuPaul's Drag Race. But I think because of that, it's now way more mainstream than it ever was before. People are way more excited about drag than there ever was before. And because it's been going on for like 14 seasons now, it's to the point where there are people who grew up watching it and grew up with it being super normalized. I think that it's really fascinating to see like trans drag queens are way more accepted now because there's been multiple trans performers on Drag Race. We see both non-binary people being celebrated on Drag Race, as well as people who are also like Mr. Eddie Izzard, gender fluid. So Mr., Mrs., gender.
Who knows, right?
Yeah. Eddie Izzard, gender fluid.
Eddie Izzard, yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
Gender fuck.
What is gender? That has had a huge impact on the mainstreaming of drag culture, to the point where I think there isn't a drag queen in the world who hasn't at least heard of RuPaul's Drag Race. And I feel like a lot of people who go to drag shows now, they go because they've heard of RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yeah. One of the latest reality TV hits here in Denmark has been a show called Denmark's Youngest Drag Queen, about this 12-year-old boy.
There's a baby drag queen.
Yes, who wants to be a drag queen. You follow him over 3 episodes, I think. He gets guidance from a drag queen I know, actually, and then ends up performing. That's the show, but what's been super interesting has been the reaction in Denmark, which has been nothing but supportive.
Yay.
Everybody's like, this kid is cool. His parents are awesome for supporting him. Everybody's just, this is what he wants to do. Let him fucking do it.
And I don't think that would have happened previously.
No.
I think it's because of things like the Jewelbox Revue, which took drag from being this underground thing to being a very classy thing, and things like Drag Race, who did the exact same thing. Like, we have this mainstreaming of like counterculture and queer culture, which is super duper cool.
One more question, sorry.
Yes.
And you may not know this, but typical drag performances before the Jewelbox Revue, were they actually like degenerate? Would the performance itself be lewd or whatever you want to call it? Or was it just the fact that it was a man impersonating a woman that made it lewd?
To be honest, I think it probably wasn't that lewd. Most of the people who ended up being on the Jewelbox Revue worked as performers before the Jewelbox.
Yeah.
And then they just got recruited to do this like higher paid gig. So it probably wasn't that degenerate or that lewd. It probably was just like, scandal, but it's a man dressed as a woman. How could they?
Yeah.
But probably no, I don't think it was.
So what really changed was the setting and the marketing, basically.
Yes.
And then the upscale, of course, the production values, right? But the content itself would probably have been very much the same, which just goes to show how much the setting, the framing of it matters.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so that was me rambling about the Jewelbox Revue for, almost 50 minutes. What did you enjoy about this episode, Alex? What are you excited about?
I mean, Stormy's amazing. I've got to read up on Stormy. I've got to watch, say, an interview. I want to learn all there is to learn about Stormy because she sounds amazing. I just love this. I mean, pioneers, right? People who take something and then bring it to the world in a way that it hasn't been done before. I think that's so cool. And then if you can do it in a way that actually promotes some healthier values, that actually, expands social consciousness and creates more room for people to just be them fucking selves.
Right?
Right? I think that's amazing. I had no idea this existed. I think it's so cool that it did. I think it's so cool that it started in 1939.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that it became socially acceptable and something you could take your family to watch. I think that's fantastic. I would assume that the show did not present itself as wanting to change society in any way. I think that's what the Mister in front of the names was there to do, right? These are men.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry. These are men. There's
cool.
Nothing weird going on here at all. But it still does. I'm pretty sure it still does. And some people would go to see it for just the show, but some people would also go see it because, hey, men in a dress, that concept interests me, and it would create a space for them where they could enjoy that. I think that's all fantastic. I love everything about this. I think it's so cool. I had no idea it existed, and my world is now a little richer and a little more fun and a little brighter because you told me about this. So thank you. Awesome.
Yes, I'm so happy. I'm so glad.
Can you watch one of their shows? Are there clips on YouTube? Or
I have yet to see any clips, which makes me deeply, deeply sad. There was a performer called Carlotta, who is an Australian performer. She went on to join the Jewelbox Revue, and there's footage of her performing before she joined the Jewelbox. So I've seen her performing.
Right.
I have yet to see anything from Stormy, which is like honestly what I want to see. However, in the documentary A Stormy Life, you get to hear from her herself, and honestly, just listening to her speak just makes me so happy. So very happy.
Yeah. So we had the sci-fi grandma a few episodes ago. I think now we have the lesbian combat grandma.
The Guardian of Greenwich is what she's known as.
Yes. I love that so much. Love that so much.
She's here to stop the ugliness. She's here only for the beauty.
Yeah.
So, what did you think about the Jewelbox Revue? Do you have any questions, or do you know of any like modern day drag shows which could compare to the Jewelbox Revue? Please let me know. Go to our website or Instagram at Electric Enthusiasm and leave a comment.
So for our moment of meta in this episode, I want to return yet again to the idea of a brighter and better future. Where was it they said we should all be interested in the future because it's where you and I will spend the rest of our lives?
That's lovely.
Twilight Zone or something?
For a second, I thought you were going to say it was from Twilight, and I'm like, bitch, what?
Charles Kettering, whoever that is. It's a good quote. So I want to return to that idea yet again. In each of the two previous occasions, I mentioned Hans Rosling, the Swedish statistician. You got to watch his TED Talk. Pretty awesome, right?
I watched it, and my dad stopped what he was doing to come over and watch with me because he was like, what's going on over there? It was really lovely. The graph animations were delightful and also very hopeful.
Yes, and he's very enthusiastic about them.
Yes, he really is.
If you haven't watched that there, listener, yet, go see it because it's amazing. We're going to link to it again, yet again. And on the website for Hans Rosling's work, gapminder.org, there is a
I
quiz.
hung out on that website. It was so fun.
Yes. And did you do the quiz?
Yes.
So what they've done is that they have polled people in different countries on their knowledge of the world. And then they compare what people think to real statistics, the real world. And people always think the world is worse than it is. I don't think there's a single question where people have a more positive view of the world than what is real. And I thought we should go through a few of those just to check it out. So, for instance, here's the question. In 1980, roughly 40% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty with less than $2 per day. What is the share today? The answers are, is it 10%, 30%, or 50%? And you've seen this coming, right, Katie? So you know it's
going to be the lowest option.
Exactly.
It's going to be 10%.
10%. Exactly correct, but 90% get that question wrong. How many countries out of 195 have some form of social security benefits for people with disabilities? Is it 46, 116, or 186 out of 195 countries? What do you think, Katie?
It's going to be 196, which is obscenely high.
Yeah, 186 out of 195 questions. How did the number of deaths per year from natural disasters change over the last 100 years? Did it more than double? Did it remain about the same, or did it decrease to less than half?
I'm going to play the game, and I'm going to say it stayed about the same.
You are wrong. It decreased to less than half.
Crazy. I did not see that coming.
So, of course, that's what they do. It highlights two important facts, this work. One, that is that the world is in so many ways is getting better. And two, we just don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know. We have been force-fed a diet of bad news from childhood and on. That means that we just don't know about all these great things going on in the world. And I think that's a shame. Just as an example, I am currently learning Spanish on Duolingo.
Nice.
Yeah. It's going really well. It's great. If there's any language, dear listener, you want to learn, Duolingo is fantastic. There's one sentence that I keep getting in various forms, and it's La sobrepoblación es una crisis mundial. Es una crisis mundial.
Overpopulation is a global crisis?
It's a global crisis, exactly.
Lol, Duolingo. No, it's not. Don't be silly.
Exactly, because it is not. It's been common knowledge among statisticians and demographers that the world population will stabilize at probably around 10 or 11 billion people. It is not gonna explode. The number of children in the world right now is falling, not because children are dying from diseases, but because of the fact that birth rates are falling in so many countries. This is a very, very well-known phenomenon. Back in the 1800s, Denmark was a pretty poor country. And as a consequence, people had a lot of kids because not a lot of them would make it into adulthood. You just needed to have a lot of kids if you wanted to preserve your family. Yeah. As soon as incomes stabilized at a fairly high level, birth rates dropped. And that happens again and again and again in every single country that is studied. Sorry, Duolingo, I love you. But global overpopulation is not a crisis. It is going to stabilize itself at around 10 or 11 billion people, and it's probably going to fall from there.
A couple years ago, there was this amazing article that I read in a Hong Kong newspaper about this opposite crisis. Not that people aren't having enough kids, but that young people are having dogs instead of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was absolutely hilarious because they were trying to say that people having dogs was going to prevent them from having children, and had a bunch of photos of people getting dogs costumes and dogs birthday cakes and people doting on their puppies. Honestly, best photos of an article ever. So many cute dogs. An absolutely ridiculous premise.
If we wanted to look at why young people today aren't having as many kids as they did 30 years ago, we could look at like income levels and working hours and support in society, childcare costs, maternity, paternity leave, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I don't.
But it's the dogs.
It's the dogs.
We have to blame the dogs.
It's a nefarious plan from the dogs got together and they're like, we need to exterminate humans.
This is how we take over.
We become super cute so that people would rather have dogs than kids.
We stop having
Yes.
babies because puppies are cuter.
Yeah, so I don't think they've studied that.
I'm going to email them now, letting them know that this is
Yeah.
clearly a misconception that they need to work on. Clearly.
Alert the world. The dogs are planning, they're scheming, they're plotting. Yeah. We're going to link to the Gapminder. We've kind of ruined the quiz for people, right? You can't really take the quiz anymore.
It's still really interesting to see the statistics. Even once
Yes.
I figured out the trend, I still wanted to know more. I still wanted to click, oh, I want to learn about this topic. I want to learn about this topic. It's like you're wrong about, but on all the things that you think are terrible in the world, and it's delightful.
Yes. Yes. So it's still worth going in there and figuring out. And then you can be right about those things instead of being wrong about those things like everybody else is. I think it's so important because we are going to spend the rest of our lives in the future. If the past is any guide, future is going to be pretty awesome. So that, dear listener, was your moment of meta. The world's getting better. Nobody knows it, but it actually is.
Secrets out. We're busting the secrets open now, guys.
Yes. You're part of the secret club of people who know what the dogs are really up to. If any dogs are listening to this, please don't kill us. I, for one, welcome our new canine overlords.
I, for one, am going to contribute to that narrative because I fully intend on having a dog, not a baby. Do you have any roundup from previous episodes?
I do. I do.
Exciting.
Just to follow up on our Wayfarer episode.
Oh!
Yeah. I'm now about halfway through the first book, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. And this time, because you set my expectations correctly, I really, really like it.
Yay!
Yes. Once you go into that book knowing that nothing's going to happen, but you will get to spend some time on this spaceship with some people who like each other, with their found family. You are going to explore some different concepts of technology and society and alien races and sexuality and food and all that stuff. As long as you go into the book with that mindset, it is actually delightful. I got it this time.
Yes.
So thank you for that. It's a great book. Highly recommended. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And then there are 3 more books in the trilogy if you like that one.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it. I'm also very glad I helped you reset your expectations.
So Katie, if somebody liked this episode, what other episode of ours do you think they'd enjoy a lot?
I feel like the first place to go is clearly the drag episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot of female impersonation. There's a lot of male impersonation in this particular episode with drag queens. I was going for drag kings and drag queens, and I said that at the same time. So if you want to learn more about drag, I talk a little bit about what drag is, and then also go into a little bit of the history of it. So you can check out our Drag 101 episode. I think that's a good place to start.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
Josephine Baker. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Joe Bake all the way.
Joe Bake was another performer at this time doing the circuits. I could totally see that being a thing.
Yeah. And she was bisexual, I think you said, in that episode?
Yes, she was. She wasn't publicly bisexual. She was closeted.
Do we know if the Jewel Box Review did any Joe Bake?
Yes, they did. Lynn Carter used to impersonate Josephine Baker.
Excellent.
Questionable. Lynn Carter is definitely a white man, but it happened.
There you go. It's all connected. It's all connected.
It's almost like we all share the same planet or something. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
We hope you enjoyed some of our weird enthusiasm in this episode. Please visit our website, electricenthusiasm.com, to find us, or check out our Instagram @electricenthusiasm to discover more episodes or leave a comment.
And now, dear listener, go fight ugliness.
Yes! I love it. Be like Stormy.
Yes, be like Stormy and go fight some ugliness.